Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, we have our very favorite kind of show today, and it is a show where not only do we have a suggestion on a topic from a listener, thank you, Andrew, we have a suggestion on a topic from a listener who is also a valued member at BuckeyeInsiders.com. So thank you also for that, Andrew. So if you want to be our boss and tell us here's what you got to do a show on, that's a great way to do it. Sign up to become a member at BuckeyeInsiders.com, and then we just have to do it. We don't have any choice. You want us to do shows on, like, I don't know, American Girl dolls or something? Like, yeah, rank them. Rank the American Girl dolls, Tony. You have to do it. I'm a member at BuckeyeInsiders.com.
Those would have to be like exclusive to members. I don't want to release those. I don't want people knowing the knowledge that I have about stuff. That's
My
between me and
my
God.
my takes on the Samantha doll are too hot for public consumption.
And frankly, the dolls at Walmart, whatever they're called, are just as good.
Keep it
Now,
behind the paywall. You're going to make
yeah,
people angry.
yeah, I don't want the American Girl Reddit to read this or watch this. So I'm going to edit all of this out so that we stay safe. I don't need people knocking on my door. I don't need the American Girl lobby swatting me, basically. Tom, that's a great lead in for what we're talking about today. Thanks for the question, as always.
Is it?
And the interesting thing is I was putting this list together without even being asked to do it. That's how in tune I am with our subscribers. And then I saw Yahoo put a list together as well of Ohio State's ranking Ohio State's opposing quarterbacks, and it's it's not easy, Tom. I know you've been putting lists together in terms of Ohio State's most impactful players, and I've been very kind to you on those on Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. I've not criticized you. I've not critiqued you. I've just been a good soldier going along with your crazy list. So I've put this list together, and we'll see how everybody feels about it. But I want to go through 12 through 9. We'll just kind of skim through, and 12 is the Ball State quarterback. 11 is the Kent State quarterback. Iowa is number 11, and that is either Hank Brown or Jeremy Hecklinski. I don't think it matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be Iowa's quarterback, and you go from there. 10, 12, 11, 10. 9 is Aiden Childs at Northwestern, who I really like the possibilities of him when he came over to Michigan State from Oregon State. I thought, he's got all kinds of skill, but he gets into all kinds of trouble on the field, and you just can't trust him. And so now he's at Northwestern, who he's got a ton of ability, but he lost his job at Michigan State, so I can't have too many expectations for him this season. Tom, any issues with any of that so far?
No, I don't have any big issues with any of those guys. Aiden Charles, I had big excitement. He helped Jonathan Smith get the Michigan State job, and then he helped Jonathan Smith lose the Michigan State job. So Aiden Charles giveth, and Aiden Charles taketh away, and now he is off to Northwestern and David Braun and Chip Kelly, and we'll see how it goes in stop number 3 for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting possibilities there, but let's start with quarterback number 8, and that is Michigan's Bryce Underwood. 3 for 2,428 yards last year, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, rushed for 392 yards and 6 touchdowns. Completed 60% of his passes, which isn't great. Just a true freshman, no real quarterback coach, all kinds of problems at Michigan. The focus wasn't there for the coach or maybe even the player. Tom, that means everybody else in the Big Ten is ranked ahead of him. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, so this is one that if someone is going to make this list look really, really, really bad later in the season, it's Bryce Underwood.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the justification for it. You look at the numbers last year, and they were relatively pedestrian, and there are all sorts of extraneous factors with the 2025 Michigan football team as is getting played out in the media right now, continues to get played out in the media right now. But he was just okay. And I think I'm expecting him to take a step this year, but we haven't seen it. This is a guy who was has an immense amount of talent, but the accuracy wasn't there. The athleticism was, he can run, but he's not Michael Vick. He can make plays with his legs. I think in this offense with the new offensive coordinator this year, he's going to make more plays with his legs. But I understand why you have him here. Personally, I would probably have split the difference and put him a couple spots higher just to avoid getting freezing cold taked potentially on this one. But I get why you have him here.
Well, and I'll just say this: there's every possibility he's in the top four, being maybe number four. I don't know that he
Yeah.
can get into the top four or into the top three, but he has the possibility. We just have not seen any proof that he's going to do it. And so until I see some of that proof, and you know, and we've seen more, and not that I've watched all of these guys because it's hard when you're covering an actual, covering a single team and you're traveling and you're doing all of that. Next is Malik Washington at Maryland, who was a true freshman as well last year. He threw for 500 more yards, 6 more touchdowns than Bryce Underwood. Rushed for 300 yards, including he had like a 150-yard rushing day, I think, against Rutgers. These are all in losses, but it's Maryland. He threw the ball a lot. They asked him to do a lot. They were able to keep him. I think a lot of these rankings also depend on who do you have the ball, who do you have that you can throw to. But I have Malik Washington here at 7, and I'm this is just based on numbers at this point and the fact that he did pretty well as a freshman and they trusted him. So let's see what he does as a sophomore.
Yeah, I think you just look at the raw stats and can kind of go, yeah, sure, that he put up better numbers than Bryce Underwood did. They were both true freshmen and both playing in the Big Ten. So sure, that's fine. I don't have a huge issue with this one. This is not a guy I'm expecting to be, I think, he's someone who could move up a spot or two maybe on this list, but I think there's a decent possibility that Bryce Underwood ends up ahead of him. But based on the numbers from last year, I don't have a huge issue with him being ahead of Underwood right now.
The big problem I'm finding is that we watched all of Bryce Underwood
Right.
and we've watched all of Julian Sand. And those are the only two quarterbacks I've watched all of. So if I had watched all of Malik Washington, I've probably, like, oh, I remember those 3 passes. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't forgive that. So I do understand that there's just more information that I have on Bryce Underwood, and the bad outweighs the good, and just haven't seen enough of the other guys necessarily to see more bad than good. But the next on this list, who we've seen some bad from, and that's Anthony Colandrea, who I'm going to assume is going to be starting at Nebraska. I know they have their quarterback back from last year who eventually took over for Dylan Raiola. But at UNLV, Colandrea threw for 3,459 yards, 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 66 completion percentage, 649 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns. He is a playmaker that drives defenses crazy. He also drives offenses crazy. And so you just never know necessarily what you're going to get. But he's a veteran. He started for 2 years at Virginia, did well for Dan Mullen at UNLV. So there's quite a bit of there, presuming he can stop with the mistakes and things like that.
Yeah, you look at his 2 years at Virginia and 62% completion, about 2,000 yards a season, 26 touchdowns, 20 picks. And that is not a good touchdown to interception ratio. Very exciting player, brackets complimentary, very exciting player, brackets derogatory. He makes stuff happen on the field. Who does he make it happen for? Sometimes it's all of the above. He goes to UNLV last year. He's working under Dan Mullen, who obviously has a reputation as a pretty solid offensive coach, and he improves his completion percentage to almost 66%, 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So okay, so you've basically doubled the number of touchdowns without increasing the number of interceptions. That's good. How much of that is working in a better offense? How much of that is playing at a lower level of the sport? How much of that is just general maturation as a quarterback? I guess we'll all find out together this year. I think he's good. I don't know that I see a lot of room for him to move up this list this year. I do see the opportunity for him to move for a Malik Washington to jump him or a Bryce Underwood to jump him. I think he's probably, maybe he can move up a spot or something like that, but I think it's maybe just as likely that he moves down if we revisit this list later in the season.
Yeah, I don't dispute that at all. The number 6 guy on this list is Illinois' Katin Houser, who is a former Michigan State quarterback. So he's good and he's going to do well. Although, admittedly, we did not have that same qualifier for Aiden Childs. But Michigan State has littered the college football world with good quarterbacks. Hauser has started at East Carolina the past 2 years, started for a good portion of Michigan State in 2023. Last year, 3,300 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 66% completion percentage, rushed for 190 some yards and 9 touchdowns. I feel like they won't get as much running out of him as they did Luke Altmaier, maybe. You won't get like the random 70-yarder, but he kind of does what is asked. And for Brett Bielema, that's pretty good. So this is more of it's like, boy, there's not much exciting about him, which is maybe that's why he's Brett Bielema's quarterback. I don't know.
He feels extremely like an Illinois quarterback, and you can take that however you want to. Where he was one of those guys who at East Carolina last year, that was a name that you just sort of saw pop up, and you're like, the former Michigan State guy, that's where he is right now. But and that might have even been 2 years ago, his first year starting, where he put up pretty good numbers, and East Carolina had some decent seasons while he was there. It's a Brett Bielema offense. You're not going to be. They're not running the run and shoot. So you're not going to be asked to do that much. But what he's going to be asked to do, he's going to be able to do. I think he's going to be probably pretty efficient. I think he's going to be reasonably effective for them, and I think they're going to win, 8-9 games this year, something like that. If he leads Illinois to an 8-4 season, that feels like extremely the right level for him, for Illinois at this point, where you're sort of maybe appearing on those college football playoff ranking shows at the very bottom of the graphic a couple times during the course of the season, but not really in the college football playoff conversation. That feels about like where this ends up. But that's a pretty good outcome for someone who left Michigan State. And, when he left Michigan State, it was not, oh, this is someone who's going on to bigger and better things. This is someone who is taking a little bit of a step down in the sport to have an opportunity to play. Now he's kind of proven himself, and we'll see what it looks like back up at this level.
Yeah, if you compare the list of quarterbacks that have left Michigan State to go on and start, it is pretty impressive, especially when you compare it against the quarterbacks that have transferred from Ohio State that have gone on to other places and not started. It's like the real quarterback factor is actually Michigan State, and then they outsource their quarterbacks to the rest of the nation. The number 4 quarterback here is Indiana's Josh Hoover, who was a 3-year starter at TCU. In 2024, threw for 3,949 yards, 27 touchdowns. Last year, 3,472 yards and 29 touchdowns. Except the problem is he's thrown 33 interceptions in the last 3 seasons as a starter. He threw 9 in 2023, 11 in 2024, 13 last year. I don't expect another 13 because he's not throwing the ball a ton. He threw the ball 272 times last year, and 13 of those were interceptions, and that's a lot. So you figure like maybe he threw the ball 413 times last year. So it's still double digit in interceptions is not something you're really interested in. They went, and this was a guy, I think even before he was in the portal, people were like, he's going to end up at Indiana. It's like, how is this known and how is this legal? But if he's the number 4 quarterback, Tom, which do you agree with that? And 2, is that good enough for Indiana?
I think this is probably pretty much in the right area for him. Could he be a spot lower? Yeah, I think the top 3 that we're going to talk about, there's a pretty clear shelf between 3 and 4 where I'm willing to entertain moving the top 3 around, and I'm willing to entertain moving, 4 through 6, 4 through 8 around. But I don't think, unless he takes a significant step forward, I don't think you're going to see him jump into the top three. This is not Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mendoza at Cal, the stats were not incredible, but you talk to people who know quarterback play and they'd go, just watch, just watch. And you're not really hearing that from those same people about Josh Hoover. I think he's going to be good, but I think this might be a little bit more of like the Nathan Rourke kind of Indiana quarterback season as opposed to the Fernando Mendoza, which is, yeah, they might win 9, 10 games this year on a historical basis for Indiana. That is incredible. That is a dream season by Indiana historical standards. At this point, it'll be like, oh man, that what a flop for Indiana. They only won 9 or 10 games this year, but I think they're going to be back to being good. I think they're going to be able to challenge the teams at the top of the league, at the top of the sport. They're not going 15-0 again this year, and that's okay. But I think Hoover's a good to potentially very good quarterback, but not great.
This is the most difficult part for me is getting this number 3 and number 2 correct. And I went with at number 3 Arch Manning.
Oh boy, Tony. Oh boy. Well, the Texas fans are going to love you. Arch's family will love it because they don't like it when you say nice things about him. So good for you to set the expectation bar low. Archie Manning will love it. Cooper Manning will love it. Everyone else, RIP to your mentions.
Yeah, and I guess we can, because here's the thing. There were just some throws last year, and again, we watched all of the throws against Ohio State, of course. There were some bad throws in there, but those weren't the only that his bad throws were not confined to that game. He got better as the season went on, had some huge runs. Some of those games where he had some big runs, he was also wasn't great throwing the ball. So there's still those issues. Now, am I just like automatically like bristling about all of the hype? I'm sure there's some of that because the hype that he received last year was certainly not commensurate with how he played at all. And yet there's also now, is it just everybody's, am I going the complete 180 and saying he's no good? No, I'm saying he's the number 3 quarterback that Ohio State will face. Also, like, I was never one of those people that was blowing him up last year in terms of the greatest quarterback prospect of all time. I was calm, Tom. You were calm. We wanted to see it. And frankly, there was no way he could have lived up to the hype. So I went with him, even though he's a very good runner. I think maybe that's the main reason why I was like, oh boy, I could make him 2, but I'm going to make him 3. And then that means Jaden Maiava from USC is my number 2. They threw for Manning threw 404 times last year. Maiava threw 403 times, and Maiava threw for 550 more yards. And so he's not quite the runner. And I think coming from UNLV was kind of overblown a little bit as well in 2024. But am I wrong? How do you feel? How would you do this?
I would probably have Manning 2, Maiava 3, but the stats are, if you're going to go with the stats on Malik Washington and Bryce Underwood, I get it going with the stats here as well. These are 2 guys who are actually in somewhat similar positions where, okay, you're coming into what could be a contract year for either of them, and you're guys you are people who play for a quarterback guru reputational sort of coach. You're guys who are playing for a program that has been a little off of its historical standard for the last several years, and just not quite gotten to where it has in certainly where the fan base would like it to be. And I don't have a strong argument against this. I would probably have Manning ahead of Maiava, but I don't know how much of that is one of them had a better wide receiver last year, and then does Texas have a better receiver this year? That Maiava had Lemon last year, and this year Manning has Cam Coleman. So does that make a big enough difference? Again, I think that you can make a reasonable argument for either of those 2 guys. I just think these guys are very clearly 2, 3, and I'm willing to entertain either one in those orders.
Yeah, I think Manning at 2 is the easier answer, so it doesn't surprise me that that's the way you would go. Number 1, Dante Moore. That's I kind of start with that and then maybe go through the rest of the list when I'm putting this together because I think he is the best. Now, he's not always the best, and we've seen him struggle at times. And he's the least experienced of the guys that we've talked about in this top three. He's mobile-ish, but he's the least impactful runner. But I still have him number one. Maybe because if you are like, if I'm a defense, which of these quarterbacks would I least want to face? And right now, that might be him. And even as I'm talking about this, I'm wondering, did I put him up too high? Am I a little overranking him? But he threw for 3,565 yards, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, which double digits, completed 72% of his passes, and a decent yards per attempt. We've seen him a lot, and he's got a ton of potential. Is number one? Are we just assuming here? Is this right?
Yeah, I assumed it. That was certainly the
Yeah.
name I would have had at number one without really thinking about it. And I think I'm probably still there. And if you want to kind of go to, okay, if those three guys had been in the NFL draft last year, which one would have gotten picked highest? And I think the answer is pretty clearly Dante Moore. I think he's got a pretty good wide receiver core. One thing that we need to talk about in this context is the loss of Will Stein, who was an offensive coordinator, now the head coach at Kentucky. Drew Maringer was the guy who's replacing him. This is an internal hire for Oregon, but this is Dan Lanning's team. Dan Lanning is a defensive guy by trade. So this is a little like when Ohio State replaces its defensive coordinator, that can swing things a little bit more than when they replace its offensive coordinator, because Ohio State has an offensive head coach. Oregon has a defensive head coach. So when you replace your offensive coordinator, that can swing the results on that side of the ball a little more than you might think otherwise. So I'm okay with this one. It is certainly the way I would have, if I just sort of sat down and
Mhm.
just kind of went bum, 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 and just sort of wrote down initial impressions. It is absolutely the guy I would have had number one on my list. I think there's a very good chance he ends up being a legitimate number one on this list. I don't think there's any chance he drops below three on this list. Again, I would be, it would not stun me if Arch Manning was the first quarterback off the board on the NFL draft next year and Dante Moore was QB2 or something like that. I don't think Dante Moore is going to, slide out of the first round or anything like that. But is it possible that he's not the best guy on this list, or he's not the best guy on this list by the end of the season? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But to me, my big takeaway is Ohio State not only faces some really good teams this year, but man, Ohio State faces some really good quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, some dangerous quarterbacks. So yeah, going to be fun. Going to be a fun season. We will be covering all of it at BuckeyeInsiders.com. Sign up right now, become a member, follow along with us, and go for a ride with us as well. We would love to see you there. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to be notified. 5-star rating and review on the audio side is always appreciated as well. So that will do it from here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.